poor single dad helps stranded twin girls, unaware their father is the judge who held his fate. The rain had been falling without mercy, heavy drops drumming against the empty highway as if the sky itself was restless. Ion drove slowly through the darkness, his hands tight on the steering wheel of his aging car. Every mile felt heavier than the last, not because of the road, but because of the weight he carried inside. Life had reduced him to survival mode. Once, he had been a man with plans and stability. But one accusation, false, yet powerful enough, had stripped him of his job, his reputation, and nearly his hope. Now he was known only as a struggling single father, fighting every day to give his young daughter a future she deserved. Tomorrow, a judge would decide whether the case hanging over his life would finally end or bury him for good. Lost in thought, Ion almost missed the sight on the roadside. Headlights cut through the rain, illuminating a sleek black car pulled over with its hood raised. Two figures stood beside it, unmoving. He slowed instinctively. Helping strangers was not something he could afford any more time. Money, trust, all were luxuries, but something in him refused to keep driving. He remembered nights when he himself had needed help and found none. With a quiet sigh, he pulled over a short distance ahead and stepped out into the rain. As he approached, he saw them clearly. Two young women stood side by side, identical in every detail, as if one had been reflected into the other. Their blonde hair was tied back tightly, rain sliding down their faces. They wore the same deep red long-sleeve tops and black shorts, soaked through, clinging to them in the cold. Their expressions were tense, their eyes fixed on him as he came closer, alert, cautious, yet silently hopeful. "Is everything all right?" Ion asked, raising his voice above the rain. One of the twins spoke, her voice steady but strained. The car had stalled suddenly. Their phones barely had signal, and they had been waiting for help that never came. The road was unfamiliar to them, and the night was growing colder by the minute. Ion nodded, listening carefully. He did not ask where they were going or why they were out here alone. Some stories did not need to be explained. He moved toward the open hood and examined the engine. It was an old problem, one he recognized immediately. He had fixed it before, back when he still did side work to make ends meet. He took off his jacket and placed it over part of the engine, shielding it from the rain as best he could. The twins watched silently, their eyes following every movement of his hands. As Ion worked, his thoughts drifted back to his daughter, waiting at home with her grandmother. She believed her father could fix anything. That belief was the one thing that kept him standing when everything else had fallen apart. He adjusted a loose connection, wiped rain from his face, and tried again. The engine coughed, then went silent. One more attempt. This time, it roared to life. The twins exchanged a look of relief, their shoulders easing for the first time. One of them smiled faintly, gratitude clear in her eyes. She thanked him, her voice softer now. Ion stepped back, already reaching for his jacket. He told them to drive straight into the city and not stop again until they reached a safe place. He spoke like a father giving advice, not a stranger performing a favor. They hesitated, clearly wanting to say more. But the rain and the moment pressed forward. Ion turned away and walked back to his car. He did not ask their names. He did not know that the man who would judge his case in the morning was their father. He did not know that this simple act would soon echo inside a courtroom far from this lonely road. As he sat behind the wheel, his phone buzzed. A message from his lawyer. The hearing was confirmed. Tomorrow would decide everything. Ion stared ahead through the rain-soaked windshield, his reflection faintly visible in the glass. He felt no pride for what he had done, no expectation of reward. He had only done what he believed was right. He started the engine and drove off into the night, unaware that fate had already begun to turn in his favor. Morning arrived without comfort. Ion stood outside the courthouse, staring at the tall stone building that had haunted his thoughts for months. The rain from the previous night had stopped, but the heaviness in his chest remained. Inside those walls, his future would be decided by a man he had never met, a judge whose name alone carried the power to either clear him or destroy what little life he had rebuilt. He straightened his worn jacket, took a slow breath, and stepped inside. The courtroom was quiet, filled with the low murmur of lawyers and the shuffle of papers. Ion took his seat, hands clasped tightly, his eyes fixed on the floor. Every moment felt stretched, as if time itself was testing his patience. When the judge finally entered, everyone stood. Ion raised his head and froze. Sitting at the front bench were two familiar faces, the twin girls from the roadside. Dressed formally now, calm and composed, they sat beside a tall, dignified man whose presence commanded the room. The judge. Ion's heart sank. The realization hit him all at once. These were not just any strangers. These were the daughters of the man who held his fate. 100 thoughts rushed through his mind. Had he unknowingly crossed a line? Would this work against him? Or worse, would his past be judged even more harshly now that fate had tangled their lives together? The proceedings began. The prosecution repeated the old accusations, speaking with confidence but offering nothing new. Ion listened silently, his lawyer countering each claim with evidence that had long been ignored. As the arguments continued, the judge listened carefully, his expression unreadable, but his eyes, when they moved, occasionally drifted toward Ion with a quiet intensity that made Ion uneasy. Then, something unexpected happened. One of the twins leaned toward her father and whispered something. The other followed, speaking just as softly. The judge's expression changed not dramatically, but enough to notice. His gaze sharpened. He asked for a brief recess. The room buzzed with confusion as people stood and murmured among themselves. During the break, Ion remained seated, unsure of what was unfolding. He did not know that the twins had told their father about the night before. The broken car, the rain, the stranger who had stopped without hesitation. They spoke of his calm voice, his patience, and how he had helped them without asking for anything in return. They told him that the man on trial was the same man who had stood in the rain to help them, when no one else would. When court resumed, the judge spoke with a firmness that silenced the room. He addressed the evidence again, this time with sharper focus. He questioned inconsistencies that had been overlooked before. He asked why certain testimonies had changed and why key details had been ignored. One by one, the weak foundation of the case began to crumble. Finally, the judge delivered his decision. The charges were dismissed. The evidence was insufficient. Ion was free. For a moment, Ion did not move. The words echoed in his mind, unreal and overwhelming. When it finally sank in, his knees nearly gave way. Months of fear and exhaustion released at once. He looked up, and his eyes met the judge's not with gratitude, but with disbelief. The judge held his gaze, then nodded once, a gesture filled with quiet respect. Outside the courtroom, as people dispersed, the twins approached Ion. They thanked him again, this time with emotion they could not hide. Their father joined them, extending his hand. He told Ion that justice should be blind, but character never is. What Ion had done on that road did not change the law, but it revealed the truth of the man standing before him. Ion walked out of the courthouse lighter than he had felt in years. He returned home to his daughter, holding her longer than usual, knowing that a single act of kindness had reshaped their future. Some moments pass unnoticed, but others born in silence and rain carry the power to change everything.